Discriminated CEO exposes injustice. 20 minutes later, a life-changing revolution begins. Emma Reyes had a fire in her belly, one that could ignite change in Maplewood. A town with a proud industrial history, it was now a patchwork of dreams and struggles. As the 35-year-old CEO of a thriving manufacturing company, she fought daily against the tides of systemic discrimination. This wasn't just a career for Emma, it was a mission to uplift her community. Growing up in an immigrant family, she knew the value of hard work and family unity. Each time she walked into her factory, she felt the weight of her ancestors behind her, urging her on. But behind the cheerful facade of summer in Maplewood and the annual fair traditions, the air was thick with economic inequalities. Emma felt the tension in the community, a palpable divide between affluent local investors and small business owners like her. Just the thought of the fair, where families gathered to celebrate, made her heart race. The joy didn't reflect the struggle, it masked it. Inspired to change this narrative, she planned a rally, inviting fellow entrepreneurs to share their experiences of facing discrimination. The news spread fast, igniting hope and stirring conversations about meritocracy versus privilege. Before she could catch her breath, betrayal hit. An unexpected leak from a close ally who was lured by the allure of traditional investors. The trust she had built was shattered. Her plans were exposed, turning whispers of support into rumors of mistrust. Emma felt the sting of betrayal deep in her chest, squeezing out hope she had fought so hard to inspire. Was the fight for justice worth such personal sacrifice? Would she become just another victim of the system? The day of the rally dawned, weaving anxiety with a fierce sense of purpose. Emma stood before a crowd that swelled with diverse faces, each one carrying their own burdens. As she stepped up to the mic, adrenaline surged through her veins. "Today, we stand together." Her voice rang out, but the energy was mixed. Some gleamed with hope, while others held tight to skepticism. Would she capture their hearts or shatter their dreams? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with conviction. She outlined a powerful initiative dedicated to economic equality and collaboration. Just as hope began to swell, chaos erupted. Accusations flew like arrows, piercing through the fragile air. Emma's heart raced, the crowd caught in a whirlwind of emotions. This was about her company, yes, but more deeply, it was about recognizing the dignity of every person in that space. They were at a crossroads, and the stakes had never been higher. Voices clashed, emotions crackled, yet Emma stood firm, a lighthouse in the storm. The community's future hung in the balance, and as cracks appeared in their unity, she realized the fight would demand more than she ever imagined. Amid glimmers of hope, a shadow loomed. Was change just out of reach? The moment was electric, a breath away from a possible revolution, but could it survive the whirlwind of doubt? Emma took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest, the tension in the air suffocating. She looked over the crowd, faces taut with uncertainty, but there were glimmers of determination in a few. They were vulnerable, yet yearning for someone to lead them beyond the tangled web of distrust. She could feel the collective heartbeat of Maplewood, pulsing with fear and hope. "Listen," she said, her voice softening, "this is not just about me. It's about every single one of you here today. It's about your families, your dreams, your future." Her words hung heavy in the air. Those who watched, once skeptical, began to lean in, a subtle shift. Emma pressed on, sharing stories of her own struggles, the bitterness of betrayal she had felt, and how it illuminated the real battle at hand. With each tale, she watched their expressions soften, as if the weight of her experience had forged a bond. They weren't alone, but just then, a voice cut through the rising tide of solidarity. And what are you going to do about it? It was a man near the front, arms crossed tightly, his brow furrowed. The crowd shifted, mumbling, uncertainty blooming anew. Emma's insides twisted. He was right, words alone wouldn't suffice. They needed action. What if we create support networks? What if we start pooling our resources and knowledge? She proposed, her energy swelling once more. Together, we can build something that works for everyone, instead of waiting for the few at the top to throw us scraps. The murmurs grew louder, and she could see interest sparking across faces. Hands began to rise. Emma called on a woman in the back, then a young man near the front, each offering their ideas. Each contribution was a thread weaving them tighter together. Emma felt the air change, the storm of doubt beginning to settle, yet, just as hope took root, a group at the edge of the crowd, largely silent until now, began to whisper. Distrust hung in their eyes. They were members of the established businesses threatened by Emma's vision. Their presence was a storm cloud darkening the hopes of many. Are you really going to take advice from her? One of them shouted, pointing accusingly. What does she know about the real world? Emma's stomach dipped. The word struck like a physical blow, yet she refused to back down. Everything. She shouted back, passion igniting. I know the feeling of being overlooked, of being forced to prove myself time and again. I know what it's like to feel powerless. But I also know that change comes from the ground up, not from the fists at the top. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The tension escalated, but Emma felt the moment shift again. Faces that had once turned away began to nod in agreement, their fear for the future blending into a fire of resolve. One by one, community members began sharing their own stories, amplifying voices that had long been muted. Emma facilitated, guiding the conversation, helping them reclaim their narrative. They spoke of resilience, shared victories, and collective dreams. But just as the rally reached a fever pitch of unity, the distant sound of sirens pierced the air. Mixed emotions flashed across faces, fear, confusion, dread. What now? Someone whispered, drawing attention back to the surrounding chaos. Emma's heart raced. Had the system sent someone to quell their uprising? Or was it merely a coincidence? As the sirens grew closer, the atmosphere shifted once more. Emma realized that the fight had just begun, and it wouldn't be an easy path. The question loomed, would they stand firm, even as the first real challenges approached? The roar of the crowd filled her ears, uncertainty and determination intertwined. Emma clenched her jaw, ready to face whatever storm lay ahead. Could they withstand this new threat? Would they come together or fracture apart? The answers hung in the balance, teetering on the fragile edge of hope. Emma's pulse quickened as the unmistakable wail of sirens drew nearer. Anxiety rippled through the crowd, faces shadowed by doubt. She instinctively stepped forward, raising her hands as if to quell the rising tide of panic. Listen. Emma's voice rang out, cutting through the din. Whatever happens, we're still here. We're still together. Her words ignited a spark of defiance, and she could see those around her straighten, resolve coming alive in their eyes, yet in the back of her mind, the pressure of potential consequences loomed. She had seen firsthand how quickly the system could turn against those who dared to challenge the status quo. Would they now send in the police, or worse, an attorney waiting to intimidate the very voices that had begun to rise up? A low murmur swept through the crowd, and Emma struggled to maintain focus amid the buzz. With her heart racing, she remembered the stories shared earlier, the experiences of those who felt lost. They weren't just people, they had become her family. She couldn't let fear sweep them back into shadows. Together, we are stronger than any threat. She shouted, her voice firm. They can try to silence us, but they will not succeed. This community is built on every person standing here today, and we will not back down. Soon, a chorus of yes echoed through the crowd, even as the sirens became an ever-present reminder of their vulnerability. Emma turned to those around her, urging them to embody the strength she felt inside. Let us turn this fear into action. We can build our networks now. We can start today, right here. From the front, a woman with tears glistening in her eyes stepped forward. I've felt so alone in this fight. I thought I was the only one facing those who didn't care, she said, her voice breaking. But right now, I don't feel alone anymore. Emma beamed, her heart swelling. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the moment where connections no longer felt like a dream but a reality within reach. Others stepped up, sharing their stories, their struggles merging into a powerful narrative of resilience. The sirens drew closer, filling the air with urgency. Emma could see shadows moving against the brilliantly painted sky, officers approaching, yet there was an untamable spirit brewing among them. Stay together, she yelled, anchoring her voice amid the rising cacophony. No one here can take away our fight, our unity. They may come with rules and regulations, but we have each other. The crowd erupted into cheers, the fear dissipating into a fierce determination. Emma looked around, meeting the eyes of those who had once doubted, their expressions transformed into something brighter, almost fierce. But then, just as adrenaline coursed through her veins, the first of the officers stepped forward. What is going on here? He demanded, his voice gravelly, the epitome of authority. Emma's stomach twisted again. Now was not the time to falter. We are standing for our rights. She squared her shoulders, heart racing. We are the people of this community standing together against injustice. The officer frowned, but behind him, a line of supporters formed, slowly stepping forward to stand alongside Emma. This wasn't just her fight anymore, it was theirs. Would they choose to uphold their Fourth Amendment rights? Would they collectively refuse to bow down in the face of oppressive authority? Emma stole a glance at the faces surrounding her. They were fueled by a fresh sense of purpose, ready to stand firm. This isn't just about today, she whispered, a tight smile spreading across her face. This is about changing everything for good. Emma could feel the electricity in the air, a tense moment that could either break or bond them irrevocably. As the officer took a step closer, something shifted behind him, a rumble of voices, louder than before. A new wave of residents began to join their collective stand. Emma's heart raced. Was this truly the tipping point, or merely a momentary spark amid chaos? The crowd's voice grew, challenging the authority before them. Yet, in that potent moment, Emma understood, this was only the beginning. How far would they go? And would the storm shake them to their core or bind them like unbreakable steel? With everything hanging in the balance, Emma took a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever came next. The officer's brow furrowed, confusion dancing across his features as he faced the growing crowd. Emma sensed the shift in the crowd's energy, the excitement blending with a spine-tingling awareness of the moment. She raised her voice, letting it carry above the surging wave of words and feelings. This is about all of us, she cried. About standing together in the face of injustice. We will not live in fear any longer. Those words ignited a chain reaction. Shouts of affirmation spread through the ranks like wildfire, each echoed call fueling their collective strength. Emma could hardly believe it. The intensity of their unity was palpable. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw someone pushing through the crowd. A tall figure, confidence radiating from his every gesture, made his way to the front. It was Ryan, an outspoken local business owner who had long been a target of the unjust policies that had divided their community. When he arrived next to Emma, he turned to the officer, his voice steady and unwavering. We are tired of being sidelined, pushed aside like we don't matter, Ryan declared, the weight of his frustration palpable. We deserve to be heard, just like everyone else. That commanding presence struck a deeper chord within the crowd, unearthing emotions once tucked away. Emma exchanged a quick glance with Ryan, grounding herself in his determination. The officer's jaw tightened, but Emma sensed a flicker of uncertainty in his stance. The electric energy of the crowd encircled them, and the historic gravity of their unified front pressed down heavily. "Do you know what it feels like?" Emma addressed the officer, her voice softer yet piercing. "To feel helpless? To be treated as less than human because of your background, your choices? We just want a fair chance." For a heartbeat, the noise around them faded to silence, and time seemed to stretch. Emma could see the officer's gaze shift, his rigid demeanor starting to crack. "Things need to change," Ryan added, his tone inviting but firm. "We're here, ready to work together, not against you, but with you. Help us begin this change." Then, a soft voice rose from the back. "I believe in a better future." It called out. It was an elderly man, his face lined with stories of hardship and resilience. "We've suffered too long in silence. Today is the day we stand up, together." His words wormed their way into the hearts of everyone present. More voices began to join the chorus, creating a symphony of hope and resolve. Each citizen standing there was sharing not just their pain but their dreams for something better, a vibrant community where they could thrive, not merely survive. Emma felt her heart swelling with possibility. This uprising wasn't just about standing firm against authority, it was about redefining how they lived and connected with one another. But just as excitement surged, Emma also felt a weight settle in her stomach. They were standing at the precipice of greatness but teetering on the edge of danger. Suddenly, the officer raised his hand, still trying to maintain control. "I can't just let you all keep going on like this. We need to follow the law." "No." Emma interrupted, her voice slicing through his words. "This is where we make the law. We need change, and it starts now." The crowd erupted again, rallying behind her. Women, men, young and old, all surged forward, shouting their desires for a better tomorrow. The air vibrated with relentless energy. But in the back of Emma's mind lingered the shadow: what if the law refused to support them? She glanced back at the officer, his uncertainty now apparent. If they made one wrong move, everything could turn south. What would happen next? Would he listen to their cries for justice, or would he signal reinforcements? Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She had pushed them to this moment, but now the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. As their voices rose in a united plea for understanding, Emma wondered, could they really reshape their future together, or were they about to face an echo of past failures? The answer lingered in the air, heavy and fraught with tension. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she felt the pulse of the crowd beneath her feet. Each shout built upon the last, creating a torrent of emotions that surged toward the officer. She had never witnessed anything quite like it, not in her town, not in her life. It felt as if they were standing on a fault line, ready to either break apart or reshape the landscape for good. Ryan, still beside her, glanced at Emma, his eyes burning with determination. "We can't back down," he urged, his voice low but firm. "This is our moment." Facing the officer, Emma nodded, her heart racing. "Make us a promise," she implored, her voice steady. "Help us. We need to be a part of the conversation." The officer hesitated. For a fleeting moment, it looked as if he might lower his guard. But the tenor of his expression turned once again, and the tension in his body seemed to thicken. "I can't guarantee anything," he said, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You all are breaking the law right now." The crowd roared in disapproval, their collective voices ringing like church bells, each chime echoing promises of change. Emma's stomach twisted. What if this escalated? What if they were shut down before their voices could even be heard? Then, she saw a young woman in the front, tears streaming down her face. "Please, officer. We just want to be seen. We're not the enemy." Her plea hung in the air, raw and desperate, piercing through the noise and carrying a weight that brought silence. For a heartbeat again, Emma felt the crowd stilling, their collective heart beating as one. Hope simmered in the silence, but Emma could sense fragility beneath it. The officer stood there, grappling with emotions he seemed unprepared to confront. Ryan stepped forward, hand raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not against you," he said, his voice calm. "We're fighting for everyone who feels invisible to be treated like we matter. We can't stay silent any longer." The officer shifted his weight, glancing between Ryan and the crowd. Emma saw doubt flicker in his eyes, almost as if he were wrestling with a choice he never thought he'd need to make. "There are rules, procedures that hurt us," came a voice from the back. A man with furrowed brows shouted fiercely. "A system that has locked us out of our own lives." The tension in the air electrified again. Emma could feel it straining and twisting around them, scavenging for resolution. This wasn't just a protest, it was a gathering of wounded hearts yearning for acknowledgement. "What do you want us to do?" the officer finally asked, weariness coloring his tone. "How do we find common ground?" In that moment, Emma felt a spark of hope. A lifeline had been thrown into the turbulent sea of emotions. "Let us speak. Let us share our stories and then help us to build a new path forward together." The energy shifted once more, hope flowing back into the crowd. Emma saw many nodding, glancing at each other in a silent agreement, a pact forming in real time. Together, Ryan echoed, a smile breaking through his earlier tension. "This is what we've been waiting for. Collaborate, not confront. Work with us." The officer's shoulders seemed to relax just a bit. "Okay, let us start small. I can listen," he conceded, slowly lowering his arm. The air felt lighter, easing the heavy fog of fear that clung to the crowd. Emma's heart raced with urgency, but they weren't out of danger yet. She could sense that they were still precariously balanced, one misstep away from losing the chance to create change. As people stepped forward to speak their truths, Emma found herself holding her breath. This was only the beginning of their journey, and they had created a crack in the wall, but cracks can widen, and walls can crumble if they're pushed just right. But was this fragile opening enough to change everything? Would it be enough to usher in a new era of unity, or would the walls stand firm in the face of change? The tension remained, charged with anticipation, as Emma wondered if this moment would lead them to a brighter future or expose the harsh realities of a world resistant to progress. The air hummed with energy as words poured from the crowd. Each story unfolded like a delicate flower, revealing the raw edges of pain and resilience. Emma listened intently, her heart swelling with pride and purpose as one voice after another shared their struggles. The warm sun bathed their faces, juxtaposing the gravity of the messages resonating around her. She could see a few tears glistening, stories wrapped in vulnerability laying bare the wounds of a community yearning for healing. "Last year, my brother was unjustly arrested," a woman cried out, her voice quivering. "He was guilty of nothing but existing in a neighborhood that nobody wanted him in. I'm done waiting for change." The crowd responded collectively, raising hands and shouting agreement. Hope zapped through the air, igniting a fire within Emma. She felt that same hope blooming in every person around her, like a courageous spark ready to catch flame. Beside her, Ryan shifted as he took a step back, allowing others their moment. Emma caught his eye, and he squeezed her hand, reminding her that they were in this together. "Look at this," he murmured. "They're all here for the same reason." Gradually, the officer, a man in his 30s with weary eyes, stepped closer to the front. "I want to hear," he declared, softer now. "Tell me about the laws that hurt you. I can't promise anything, but I will listen." A ripple of disbelief coursed through the audience. Could it be? The officer wanted to engage? Emma felt her emotions coiling around hope, but her stomach churned. This was uncharted territory, and they were still walking a tightrope. As a young man stepped forward, his voice broke. "I want my little brother to grow up in a world where he can dream without fear, where he can be himself." The sentiment struck a chord, and murmurs of agreement swept across the gathering. There was something profoundly vulnerable about wanting a better tomorrow, not just for oneself, but for those who would inherit the future. The officer listened with furrowed brows, his focus shifting from his badge to the people in front of him. Emma watched his stature soften as he absorbed their stories. The weight of his previous resolve seemed to dissolve. As the crowd rallied around the exchange, an unexpected voice rose from the back. "Why haven't we been allowed in these conversations before?" a woman demanded. "Why do we have to beg for help and community? This was never for you to decide." The intensity in her voice cut through the gathered emotions, echoing a truth no one could ignore. The officer's gaze flickered, and for a brief moment, he seemed taken aback. Emma knew these moments of honesty were where change could flourish, but she also knew that confronting systemic issues would be more complex than it appeared. "Let us not forget the past too quickly," Ryan warned. His voice was strong but cautious. "Transformation requires accountability. We can't just brush away years of hurt with a few conversations." Emma nodded, taken by the weight of his words. They hadn't just come to voice their pain, they were declaring their right to a future built on respect and equality. As dialogue began to flow between the citizens and the officer, Emma felt a stirring in the distance. A small group of onlookers stood near the back, their faces marked with suspicion and scorn. She caught a glimpse of a handheld camera, recording the scene, and a gnawing dread crept beneath her skin. Were they witnessing change or simply looking to mock it? Emma's heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Was this gathering a genuine breakthrough, or would those committed to the status quo snuff it out before it breathed life? The realization washed over her. Not everyone saw the transformation as they did. With her stomach in knots, Emma steeled herself, knowing this moment may ripple outwards, but it could also draw shadowy challenges closer. The officer's next words hung heavy in the air. "Let us focus on how I can help you." As the crowd leaned in, eager and hopeful, the shadows at the periphery loomed larger. What would happen when the real pressure hit? Would their voices drown in the chaos of dissent? Or was this just the beginning of something powerful and unstoppable? Emma's pulse quickened as the officer took a step forward, ready to bridge the chasm that had long divided the community and law enforcement. His voice wavered with a sincerity that caught many off guard. "I need your help to understand," he implored as hope danced in his eyes. "Your truth can guide my actions." The crowd swelled with murmurs, uncertainty wrestling with optimism. Emma caught Ryan's expression, a mix of intrigue and wariness. He had always believed in accountability, and the officer's intent still felt tentative, like a tree branch swaying in a gust of wind. "Do you really want to know what we've faced?" a young woman shouted, her voice rising above the others. "Do you really care?" "Yes," the officer replied, a note of urgency in his tone. "I may not relate to every experience, but I want to hear it. I want to take these stories back with me." With the crowd galvanized, people began to pour out their lives like a rushing river. "We reach out for help, only to be met with violence," a father shouted, fists clenched. "My son was stopped for no reason. He deserves to walk home safely." Emma was swept up in the tide of emotions, feeling the anguish deep in her bones. She could see the fire igniting in others' eyes. This was an awakening, a moment when unfathomable grief transformed into potent resolve. Yet, with every passionate story shared, the group of skeptics at the back remained, their camera still rolling, capturing every raw moment. Emma's heart sank with the realization of a looming conflict. It was not just about healing, but about being scrutinized, ridiculed, and challenged. A voice, powerful and resolute, broke through. "We won't be silenced anymore. We demand action." The crowd rallied around the sentiment, banners of hope raised high. Emma felt the shift. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a commitment to an uprising. But as each voice rose, so did tension. The officer's expression flickered with concern as he sensed the crowd's intensity. "I can relate to the fear of losing a loved one," he confessed carefully. "I lost my brother to violence. The question is, what can we do to make this stop?" A heavy silence blanketed them, the collective breath of hundreds held tight, waiting for the next moment, a beacon of possibility. "That's where accountability comes in," Ryan shouted, hands gesturing wide. "It's not just about listening. It's about action. We need you to advocate for policy changes. We need to see results, not just words. Approbation rippled through the gathering, echoing Ryan's sentiments. The emotions were raw and urgent, like the pulse of a drumbeat resonating in the depths of their souls. The officer nodded slowly, visibly digesting their pleas, yet Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows lurking in the periphery were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It was as if they were waiting for this moment of vulnerability to burst the bubble of hope, ready to dismantle the unity that had formed. The camera continued to roll, each frame an invitation for derision. As the dynamic shifted in the crowd, an outsider with a disapproving sneer shouted, "What about the cops who keep us safe? Are you willing to tear them down without a second thought?" The words hung in the air, heavy with dissent. Emma's heart pounded faster. Would this gathering turn into chaos? Would anger eclipse their message of hope? With the officer caught between conflicting loyalties, she felt the delicate threads of potential change fraying. This was a moment that could tip either way. As the crowd erupted into a cacophony of voices, some calling for accountability, others defending the officer. Emma grasped Ryan's hand tighter. She needed to feel grounded. In the chaos, she felt the resolve to rise even higher, but she could sense a storm brewing. The tension breathed life into the air, thick and electric, and Emma knew they stood on the edge of something monumental. Would they find a way to bridge the divide? Or had they opened a rift deep enough that they might never recover? As the crowd's pulse continued to thrum with uncertainty, an unexpected figure emerged from the back, their intentions unreadable. What would this new presence bring? Would they light the path toward resolution, or cast a deeper shadow over the fragile hopes rising within the crowd? A tall figure stepped forward, cloaked in the shadows of the gathering. Emma squinted, trying to make out who it was. The indistinct features became clearer, and a gasp rippled through the crowd. Clara, the former CEO of a local tech company, famed for her philanthropic efforts yet often criticized for her cutthroat business tactics. Emma felt a strange mix of admiration and apprehension. Why was she here, at a moment so crucial, when tensions flared like wildfire? Enough! Clara's voice sliced through the noise, sharp and commanding. The crowd fell silent, curiosity mixed with unease. Eyes turned to her, and for the first time, the chaos began to dissipate. I see people who are angry, people who want change. But do we know what that change looks like? Clara continued, surveying the faces before her. You can demand action, but if you don't know what you're asking for, how will you know if you get it? The officer's face hardened at her words, but there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Emma sensed that Clara was about to shift the whole narrative. We need a plan, Clara insisted, her voice rising over the crowd, passionate yet controlled. You're standing on the brink of an uprising, but emotion without strategy is a fire without direction. We can't simply scream for justice, we have to define what justice means. Ryan, still holding Emma's hand, looked conflicted. We've got the stories. Isn't that enough? He shouted, frustration coloring his tone. Clara stepped closer, her gaze piercing Ryan's like an arrow. Your stories matter, and they need to be heard. But they also need to translate into actionable changes. I can facilitate that. I've navigated boardrooms and political rooms. I've made deals happen, and I'm here to help you craft a path forward. Emma felt a swell of hope at her words but also a sense of caution. Could Clara really be trusted? Maybe this was what they needed, a person in a position of power to forge alliances. But alliances had a way of complicating things, especially in this charged environment. What do you suggest? Came a voice from the crowd, hesitantly stepping forward. Clara smiled, picking up on the opening. Let us form a committee, where voices from the community and law enforcement can speak together, share resources, and develop actionable goals. We'll identify what policies need to change and create a list of accountability measures. The crowd murmured, the sentiment shifting from skepticism to a renewed sense of possibility. Emma could feel the energy shifting, her heart racing, a butterfly trapped in her chest. Yes, this might be the start they had been hoping for. But as she glanced over at the officer, his brow wrinkled with concern, Emma questioned whether this would bring real change or if it was simply another polished response to a raw wound. Then, the outsider who had earlier spoken up chimed in once more, a hint of derision creeping into their voice. And how do we know these changes won't compromise our safety even more? Another committee? More talk. Clara paused, reading the air thick with uncertainty. That's the point of accountability, isn't it? To ensure that every step we take is scrutinized, every change discussed openly, with everyone's voices at the table. An eerie silence fell, the crowd caught in the push and pull between hope and doubt. Emma felt an overwhelming rush of emotion. It was a precarious tightrope they were walking. Would this newfound initiative truly lead to something transformative? Or would it simply be another attempt at bandaging a deep wound without proper healing? As Clara turned to the officer, Emma held her breath. It was a crucial moment, one that could either unite them or drive them further apart. How would the officer respond to Clara's proposal? There was so much at stake, and the fate of their unity lay precariously in those next few seconds. Clara's gaze locked onto the officer, who stood rigid, his hands tensed at his sides. Emma could almost see the gears turning in his mind. This was a man who had seen the fractures within his own department, but also knew the risks that lay ahead. The crowd seemed to hold its breath alongside her. "Change is hard," the officer finally said, his voice low but resolute. "What you're suggesting requires trust. How do I know that this isn't just a means to drive a wedge between us?" He surveyed the gathering, challenging anyone to answer. Clara stepped forward, her shoulders back. "Trust is built on transparency. We can create a framework that holds us accountable to not just our promises, but to each other. I know the fears on both sides, and for change to happen, we have to face them together." Ryan squeezed Emma's hand, a mix of hope and skepticism written across his face. She mirrored his sentiment, torn between Clara's eloquence and the lingering discomfort she felt in her gut. "What makes you think you can lead this?" Someone shouted from the back, emboldened by the charged atmosphere. "You've made enemies in the past. Why should we follow you now?" The murmurs rolled through the crowd again, a swell of dissent that threatened to reignite the forming flames of anger. Clara's eyes narrowed, but her expression remained calm. "I've made mistakes. I own that. I've learned that passion can blind, and I want to ensure we don't repeat that mistake here. You need not accept me blindly, but give me a chance to show you the potential of this collaboration." Emma felt the weight of Clara's words. They weren't just empty platitudes, they had a ring of authenticity that connected with the desires echoing in her own heart. She glanced at Ryan, but he was still lost in thought, uncertainty clouding his usually bright demeanor. Then, another figure stepped forward, someone Emma recognized: Leah, a prominent activist known for her relentless work in the community. She had rallied people for justice before, and her presence here ignited flickers of recognition and support. "If we want change, we need to seize it." "I'm in for this committee," Leah declared, her voice steady and loud against the gathering storm. The crowd stirred again, some nodding in agreement, others still holding back. Leah's stance had given voice to a swell of longing that unspooled in the air around them. It was palpable, the strength of community spirit forming, yet it was still a hesitant embrace. "Okay," another voice chimed in, timid yet resolute. "If we're doing this, let us make sure it's not just a band-aid. We need concrete goals. We need to keep pushing if things don't change." Clara's face lit up, a flicker of hope mingling with purpose. "Exactly. Together, we can set tangible objectives. If we see things stagnate, we can call each other out. No more hollow promises." The crowd engaged, voices rising and falling. Individuals began to share their ideas, snippets of concern intermingled with visions of revitalization. Emma's heart soared and sank with every rising shout and sinking doubt, but then, the outsider, who had remained skeptical, interjected once again. "You're asking us to trust the system. What if history just repeats itself? We've been let down before. The phrase hung in the air like an uninvited guest, and Emma felt her stomach twist. Could Clara steer them in a new direction? Or was this a rerun of an exhausting cycle? As Clara attempted to regroup the conversation into something constructive, Emma glanced around. The togetherness they yearned for was palpable, but the fear of betrayal lingered like a shadow. She knew then that whatever happened next could tip the balance precariously. What's at stake here is more than just the past, Clara pressed, her voice cutting through the snide doubts. It's about creating a future where we all belong. Emma clenched her jaw, waiting for someone to respond, her pulse racing with anticipation. Would they be willing to forge ahead with a plan that could change everything? Or would they retreat back to fear and isolation, as hushed whispers transformed into choruses of uncertainty? The tension hung thick. Emma held her breath, desperate for unity yet terrified of the fractures that could deepen. In that fragile moment, she realized one thing: change demanded courage, and every person here would need to summon theirs. But as Clara's eyes scanned the faces before her, one burning question lingered unanswered: was this the beginning of genuine change, or was it just another fleeting promise in a lifetime of broken ones? Emma waited, the air around her crackling with anticipation for whatever came next. The crowd held its breath as a long moment stretched between them. Emma could feel the weight of uncertainty sink down deeper, tightening like a grip around her heart. Their unity felt like a fragile glass sculpture on the verge of shattering, teetering away from hope into despair. Listen. Emma stepped up again, raising her voice above the anxiety that buzzed like bees. Right now, we have a chance. A real chance. But we need to commit. Not just to words, but to action, to real change. She locked eyes with each person she could see, urging them to understand the gravity of their moment. From the back, the young woman who had spoken so passionately earlier stepped forward again. I think I speak for many when I say I'm tired of talk. We have to see something happen. We need justice. Cheers echoed through the crowd, and Emma felt a surge of determination rise. They were raw but united, holding as one collective heartbeat. The officer stood before them, still uncertain but visibly softened. What do you need to see? Realistically? He asked, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his voice. His willingness to engage showed a chink in the armor that once felt unyieldable. Emma took a deep breath, momentarily stunned by the breakthrough. What if we create this committee? We set specific goals that matter to our community. We meet regularly to discuss progress. If nothing changes, we need to demand louder action, accountability, and, above all, partnership. The vision burned in her heart, sparking a fire she hoped to ignite among them all. For the first time, she saw nods of agreement filtering through the crowd, expressions shifting from skepticism to a glimmer of hope. Ryan squeezed her hand tightly, channels of support coursing through them. That's it, he called out, voice steady and passionate. We come together. We create change. No more sidestepping, no more excuses. Before long, people began calling out ideas, suggesting ways to engage with the local government, and insisting that they must not only be heard but also act to redefine their reality. Emma felt her spirit lift. This was more than she dreamed possible. The crowd was lifting her up, a wave of momentum forging something solid built on shared desires and experiences. As the officer stepped back slightly, turning to note Clara, Emma felt the room shift yet again. Clara took a deep breath, her voice measured. We address our fears, allow conversations without judgment. We seek empathy above all. This committee could be citizens and law enforcement, all in pursuit of a better Maplewood. Together. The crowd roared, hearts echoing her sentiment in waves of hope. Suddenly, the skeptical outsider spoke up once more, but this time without the shadow of derision. Can we really trust this will work? How do we ensure it's not another way to silence us? Emma felt a surge of compassion and sureness. We ensure it by being vigilant. By documenting everything. We must demand transparency and collaboration. If we don't see change, we rally again together. We stay in touch, keep the pressure until we gain what we deserve, a community that flourishes. Eyes glimmered with excitement and fear. But this was different, it was fueled by a shared belief that they could drive something real. The air thrummed with a new narrative. This wasn't just a negotiation, it was a declaration. Emma sensed the shift, trust was growing. The shadows that felt so looming began to lift. The crowd rallied around Clara's proposal, affirming their commitment to be involved, engaged, and present. "Let us create a path that works for all," Ryan added fiercely. "Now is the time for every single one of us to stake our place in creating a future we want to see." As hearts and hands united, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of relief. They were at the start of something monumental, one that connected lives and futures, weaving into a communal tapestry of resilience. The officer nodded firmly, acknowledging their commitment with palpable respect. Clara looked around, meeting hesitantly eager faces. "Then let us make this our beginning," she said, voice full of conviction. "And together, we'll dismantle the barriers, we'll push for laws that protect and uplift us all." Emma smiled brightly, feeling layers of hope pile on top of each other. "Together," she echoed, heart swelling as a beautiful chorus arose, one that carried their aspirations far and wide. The day would be a turning point, a catalyst that ignited growth in Maplewood, and at long last, their cries for change not just as whispers, but as roars would shape the way forward, hand in hand, heart in heart. Emma knew this moment would encapsulate the spirit of their community, alive, vibrant, and ready to face whatever lay ahead. The new chapter in their story had begun, and its pages were yet to be written, but together, they would write a future they could all believe in. And as they left the gathering that day, Emma turned to Ryan, a radiant smile across her face. "We've just started to change the world," she whispered. "Let us keep pushing," he replied, intertwining his fingers with hers, his eyes shining with a promise of commitment. "This is just the beginning." And indeed, the chorus of change had begun, a melody echoing through Maplewood, forever woven within the fabric of their town. It was time for action, for the voices of the unheard to rise and finally be acknowledged, and so, a new dawn broke over Maplewood, where dreams are built on the unity of many, and the stirring of voices long silenced began to resonate clearly, strongly, joyously, echoing in the heart of their vibrant community. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.